The Galactic Council, an ancient alliance of 5 advanced alien species, had maintained peace across thousands of star systems for millennia. Humanity, a relatively young species, had recently earned a provisional seat at the council table. Captain Victoria Hayes commanded the human diplomatic fleet, a symbol of humanity's aspirations to join the greater galactic community. During a routine trade expedition near the neutral zone, the human fleet encountered a massive distress signal. A Valorian cargo vessel, belonging to one of the council's oldest members, was crippled and dying in deep space. The Valorians were a proud ancient civilization known for their technological superiority and their disdain for younger species like humans. Without hesitation, Captain Hayes diverted her entire fleet to assist. Her crews risked their own ships, repair mechanisms, and supplies to save the Valorians. The human engineers worked around the clock, using innovative techniques to stabilize the alien vessel. Against all odds, they succeeded. The Valorian commander, Lord Kessian, survived along with his entire crew. Grateful but arrogant, Lord Kessian dismissed the human sacrifice as mere luck and coincidence. He ordered his ship repaired and departed without acknowledgement, warning Captain Hayes that humanity remained beneath the notice of truly civilized species. The insult stung, but Victoria urged her crew to remember why they had helped, because it was right, not for recognition. Within weeks, a disturbing pattern emerged. The Valorians began spreading propaganda throughout the council, claiming that humans were too primitive to be trusted. They demanded humanity's seat be revoked. More troublingly, they began blocking human trade routes, sabotaging scientific collaborations, and isolating Earth diplomatically. Then came the attack. A Valorian armada claimed that humans had attempted to steal their technology. In a coordinated strike, they destroyed 3 human colonies on the Outer Rim worlds. Thousands died. The Council, paralyzed by ancient protocols and divided loyalties, refused to intervene. Humanity stood alone. Captain Hayes returned to Earth a changed woman. The species that had shown kindness to an ungrateful alien civilization now faced annihilation. But humanity had learned something the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes you must stand alone. In the aftermath of the attacks, Commander Marcus Griffin took control of Earth's military operations. The planet united under a single banner of survival. Scientists, engineers, and former soldiers worked together to develop new technologies. They analyzed every piece of Valorian wreckage recovered from the destroyed colonies. Among the human scientists was Dr. Angela Morrison, a brilliant physicist who had studied interstellar propulsion for years. Using recovered Valorian technology as a foundation, she led a team that developed something revolutionary, a new class of battleship that combined human ingenuity with stolen alien technology. The vessels were called the Resolute class, and they were faster, more agile, and more deadly than anything the Council had ever seen. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Carter discovered something in the Valorian data. Lord Kessian had deliberately lied to the Council about the attack on human colonies. The Valorians had fabricated evidence to paint humanity as aggressors. This deception was documented in encrypted files. Carter worked to decode and authenticate the evidence, knowing it could change everything. But there was a problem. Even with proof of Valorian treachery, the Council was fractured. The Zyrosian species, themselves rivals of the Valorians, demanded justice but lacked the military power to enforce it. The Krillian alliance remained neutral, unwilling to risk their own interests. The eldest council members simply wanted to maintain the status quo. Humanity realized the truth. The galaxy's ancient powers had become complacent. They had become so accustomed to peace that they had forgotten how to defend it. They had forgotten how to honor debts or punish betrayal, and they had gravely underestimated humanity's capacity for resilience and innovation. Captain Victoria Hayes underwent advanced cybernetic enhancement, becoming the first fully augmented human military commander. She was no longer just a captain. She was humanity's sword. With her as the strategic mind and Dr. Morrison's technology as their shield, Earth began its transformation from victim to force. The first human task force launched from Earth orbit, not toward the Valorian homeworld, but toward one of their military stations in the outer territories. The message was clear. Humanity was coming, and they were coming to settle accounts. The attack on Valorian Station 12 shocked the entire galaxy. The new Resolute-class battleships emerged from faster-than-light travel, and unleashed a coordinated assault that crippled the station's defense grid within hours. Human soldiers, trained in tactics learned from studying alien warfare for decades, executed a perfect boarding operation. The station fell with minimal human casualties. What made the moment legendary was what Captain Hayes broadcast across the open channels, a statement addressed to Lord Kessian and the Galactic Council. She spoke calmly and without rage. She reminded the Valorians of the day they had saved their commander's life. She reminded the Council that humans valued honor and kept their word. Then she made a declaration. "We have come not for conquest, but for justice. The Valorians will answer for their crimes. Those who stand with us will be treated as allies. Those who stand against us will be treated as enemies." The galaxy held its breath. No young species had ever challenged the ancient powers this way. The Valorians were shocked and humiliated. Their pride demanded immediate retaliation, but their military capabilities were suddenly in question. The Resolute-class battleships proved more effective in combat than any vessel they had encountered in centuries. Dr. Angela Morrison's team, having analyzed more Valorian technology, made a breakthrough. They developed a communications jamming system that could disrupt Valorian tactical networks. Combined with superior human tactical flexibility and innovation, this technology gave humanity an unprecedented advantage. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Carter released the decoded evidence of Valorian deception across every Council communication channel. The proof was irrefutable. Lord Kessian had ordered the attack on human colonies in a calculated attempt to frame humanity and secure political dominance within the Council. The Xyrosian species, seeing an opportunity, allied openly with humanity. The Krillian alliance, recognizing that the Council's old order was ending, negotiated with both sides. The message from the galaxy's younger species was clear. They were tired of ancient powers controlling their fate. 2 more Valorian military installations fell to human forces. With each victory, humanity's technological reputation grew. With each transmission from Captain Hayes, more worlds listened. The Valorians, facing the prospect of total military defeat, began to retreat toward their homeworld. But Captain Hayes made a calculated decision. Instead of pursuing them to destruction, she offered a path to peace. The Valorians could surrender their military assets in the outer territories, submit to a Council investigation into Lord Kessian's crimes, and accept humanity as equals in the galactic community. The alternative was total annihilation of their civilization. Lord Kessian was delivered to the Galactic Council's primary station by human forces. The trial that followed was the most significant event in the Council's recorded history. Evidence of the Valorian commander's calculated deception was presented. Ancient laws written thousands of years ago were invoked. For the first time in recorded memory, one of the great powers faced judgment for its crimes. Commander Marcus Griffin, representing Earth's government, stood before the Council and spoke. He did not call for the Valorian species' destruction, though he had every right to do so. Instead, he called for justice, restitution, and reconciliation. He spoke of the day Captain Hayes had saved Lord Kessian's life and received nothing but contempt in return. "Humanity showed kindness," Griffin said, "and we learned that the galaxy had forgotten what kindness meant. We will not make that mistake again, but we will also not become the tyrants we defeated. We will lead by example as we always have." Lord Kessian was sentenced to permanent exile. The Valorian civilization was restructured under a new leadership, committed to the Council's laws. Reparations were agreed upon for the destroyed colonies and the lost lives. More importantly, the galaxy itself was changed. Young species began requesting seats at the Council table. The ancient powers, humbled by humanity's rise, recognized that the old order had failed because it had become corrupt and complacent. Humanity's intervention had not been an act of conquest, but an act of mercy disguised as necessary force. Dr. Angela Morrison received the Council's highest scientific honor. Captain Victoria Hayes became humanity's ambassador to the Council, a position of influence and respect. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Carter led the new Interstellar Justice Commission, tasked with investigating and preventing future crimes by the great powers. Earth, once a distant world of limited importance, became a symbol of hope and innovation. Young species across the galaxy looked to humanity as proof that a new species could rise, could face injustice without surrendering to tyranny, and could achieve victory without losing its soul. 10 years after the resolution of the Valorian crisis, the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Humanity's influence extended across countless star systems. New alliances formed, based not on ancient treaties but on shared values and mutual respect. The Resolute-class battleships became the standard template for the galaxy's defense forces, though each species developed their own variations. Captain Victoria Hayes, now an admiral, retired from active military duty to write her memoirs and mentor the next generation of human leaders. In her final address before the Council, she returned to her original theme: kindness is not weakness, it is the foundation of civilization. Commander Marcus Griffin led Earth's government into a new era of prosperity and influence. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive now led scientific initiatives, technological development, and diplomatic efforts across the galaxy. But the most profound change was in how younger species viewed their place in the universe. They no longer accepted the notion that they were inferior to ancient powers. They demonstrated that innovation, courage, and moral clarity could overcome age and complacency. 1,000 new species looked at humanity's ascension and asked themselves, what could we achieve if we believed in ourselves? The Valorians, humbled but not destroyed, eventually acknowledged the truth. In a formal statement before the Council, the new Valorian leadership admitted that the act of kindness shown by Captain Hayes all those years ago had revealed something fundamental about their civilization's failure. They had become so advanced that they had forgotten the principles that made advancement meaningful. Lord Kessian, exiled on a remote station, spent his days reflecting on the moment when a young species saved his life, only to be dismissed with contempt. In the end, he realized that he had not been defeated by weapons or tactics. He had been defeated by humanity's unwillingness to abandon their principles, even when facing annihilation. 20 years had passed since humanity first challenged the Galactic Council's authority. The changes that had begun with a single act of defiance had spread throughout the galaxy, like ripples in still water. Earth had become a center of learning and culture, attracting scholars and scientists from across 1,000 worlds. Admiral Victoria Hayes stood in the newly constructed Hall of Remembrance on Earth, looking at the memorial dedicated to those who had fallen in the Valorian crisis. Her enhanced cybernetic eye processed the names scrolling across the holographic display. Each name represented a life given for the principle that kindness, when betrayed, demands accountability. She thought often of Lord Kessian and wondered if he had ever truly understood the lesson his exile was meant to teach. Dr. Angela Morrison had achieved a level of influence she had never imagined possible. Her research into hybrid technologies had led to discoveries that benefited species across the galaxy. Universities across dozens of worlds now taught her principles of adaptive engineering. Her most proud achievement was the Morrison Institute for Ethical Technology, where young scientists from all species learned that innovation without morality was merely weaponization. Lieutenant Colonel Stephen Carter had transformed the Interstellar Justice Commission into the most respected institution in the known galaxy. 7 attempted crimes by ancient powers had been uncovered and prosecuted, each time following the model set by the Valorian trial. Corruption and abuse of authority, once treated as acceptable behavior for elder species, now carried real consequences. The younger races, empowered by human example, had begun holding even the most powerful accountable. However, not everyone celebrated humanity's rise. In the distant regions of the galaxy, whispers of resentment grew among the Valorian remnants. Some had accepted the new order, but others harbored deep shame and anger at their humiliation. A small faction, led by a rogue general named Vorthak, began secretly gathering military resources. They told themselves that humanity's dominance was temporary, that the ancient powers would reclaim their rightful place at the galaxy's apex. Commander Marcus Griffin, now gray at the temples but still commanding Earth's defense infrastructure, received troubling intelligence reports. The Valorian faction under Vorthak's command was building hidden shipyards and recruiting discontented soldiers from their species. More alarmingly, they had begun making contact with other disgruntled factions from minor civilizations, promising them protection and a share of power if they aided in removing human influence from the galaxy. The threat was serious, but it was not unexpected. Griffin brought his concerns to Admiral Hayes and the Council. "We expected this," Hayes said during a closed-door session with Earth's leadership. Those who benefited from the old system will always resist change. The question is not whether we will face another conflict, but how we respond to it. Do we crush our enemies? Or do we demonstrate that our system of justice truly offers redemption to those willing to accept it? This debate reflected the fundamental challenge of humanity's new position. They possessed overwhelming military superiority, but they had also set themselves apart by refusing to abuse that power. Using extreme force against the Valorian faction would be justified by their threat, but it would also validate their claims that humanity had become the galaxy's new tyranny. Across the galaxy, younger species watched to see how humanity would handle this test. The Zyrosians, who had allied with humans against the Valorians, quietly increased their military presence, ready to support Earth if conflict erupted. The Krillian alliance, still cautious and neutral, began considering which side they might eventually support. Meanwhile, on Earth, a new generation of human leaders was being trained. Among them was Lieutenant Catherine Chen, a brilliant tactical officer whose grandfather had served under Captain Hayes herself. Catherine represented the future of humanity's place in the galaxy, soldiers and diplomats who had never known a time when humans were considered inferior. For them, humanity's dominance was not a conquest to celebrate, but a responsibility to uphold. In the hidden bases where Vorthak and his faction plotted, they underestimated one crucial factor. Humanity's intelligence networks had long since infiltrated their organization. Stephen Carter's team at the Justice Commission had placed operatives within the Valorian cells, not to conduct secret operations, but to wait for the right moment to present evidence. Once again, humanity would choose the path of transparency and justice over hidden vengeance. Admiral Hayes made a final decision. She would broadcast a message directly to General Vorthak and all those who harbored resentment against humanity's rise. In that message, she would offer something that had never been offered in the galaxy's history: a genuine path to reconciliation for those who had committed crimes against humanity, provided they surrendered their weapons and submitted to the justice system. It was a dangerous gamble. Some of her advisors argued that she was showing weakness, that enemies would interpret her offer as fear. But Hayes believed something different. She believed that if humanity truly stood for something better than the old order they had replaced, they had to prove it through their actions, not merely their words. As the broadcast was being prepared, Admiral Hayes recorded her opening statement. She spoke directly to the camera, her augmented eye reflecting the light as she held the gaze of billions of viewers across the galaxy. My name is Victoria Hayes, and 20 years ago, I saved the life of a man who would later try to destroy my people. I did not save him for gratitude or recognition. I saved him because it was the right thing to do. That moment, that act of kindness, defined not just my life but the future of humanity in this galaxy. Today I stand before you, before all species, all worlds, all those who listen, and I offer the same choice to those who have chosen enmity. You can surrender your weapons, face justice, and seek redemption, or you can continue down a path that can only end in your defeat and destruction. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle across the galaxy. We are humanity. We do not forget kindness, and we do not forget betrayal, but we also do not forget mercy. Choose wisely. The broadcast went out across every communication channel, reaching even the most remote outposts. In the hidden bases where Vorthak and his followers plotted, the message created confusion and division. Some saw it as proof of weakness. Others, particularly younger soldiers who had only known the post-war order, began to question whether their rebellion had any legitimate purpose. 3 weeks after the broadcast, the first surrenders began. A Valorian commodore, followed by 3 others, ordered their ships to dock at peaceful stations rather than continue fighting for a cause that seemed increasingly lost. They submitted themselves to the Justice Commission, accepting whatever penalties the law demanded. General Vorthak, faced with his rebellion crumbling around him, made his own decision. He did not surrender. Instead, he launched a final desperate attack on a human trade station in the Outer Territories. The attack failed. Humanity's defense systems, designed with both power and precision, neutralized the threat with minimal collateral damage. Vorthak was captured alive, as were most of his soldiers. At his trial, which was conducted with full transparency and broadcast across the galaxy, Vorthak was given the opportunity to speak. "You have made us weak," he said bitterly, addressing the Council and humanity. You have turned conquest into negotiation and victory into reconciliation. Admiral Hayes, who was present at the trial, responded personally, "No, General. We have made the galaxy better. You mistook strength for cruelty, and that is why you have lost." Vorthak was sentenced not to death or exile, but to 50 years of labor and rehabilitation, with the opportunity for early release if he demonstrated genuine reform. The sentence shocked some observers across the galaxy, who expected the humans to execute the man who had directly attacked their people. But this was the point humanity was making. They did not execute their enemies. They reformed them. In the years that followed, some of Vorthak's followers did eventually accept rehabilitation and were reintegrated into galactic society. Others rejected the offer and served their full sentences. But the message had been sent clearly. In the new galaxy that humanity was helping to build, there was always a path to redemption, but there were also real consequences for one's actions. As time moved forward, Earth's influence continued to grow, but in a manner fundamentally different from the old powers. Humanity did not demand tribute or subjugation from younger species. Instead, they offered knowledge, protection, and partnership. Young species that had been threatened by older powers now looked to Earth as a refuge and an inspiration. Admiral Victoria Hayes, now in her final years, spent her time mentoring the next generation of human leaders. She would often speak to students and future commanders about the philosophy that had guided her throughout her career. "Kindness is not the absence of strength," she would tell them. "Kindness is the proper use of strength. When you have the power to destroy your enemy, and you choose instead to offer them justice and the chance at redemption, that is true strength. That is what makes us human. That is what will make us remembered not as conquerors but as architects of a better galaxy." And so the